Armed with a degree in broadcasting from the University of Illinois and God-given talent, Kenneth Ulmer seemed destined for Hollywood.
I came to this town with a dream, and my dream was to get into broadcasting. I remember going around to every station 2 or 3 times, applying and applying and applying, trying to get a job. It took me 5 years, and finally, I got into radio at the #1 news station in town, located right here on Hollywood Boulevard, above a bar and a porno shop. I was climbing in my career. I was learning fast. I was getting more and more clients. I was making very good money. And one would think that that should be, if not the pinnacle of your life, certainly climbing the mountain to the pinnacle of your life. And yet, paradoxically, when I left the radio station, I would live in a world of darkness. Lonely, depressed, discouraged, because I felt like such a failure. In and out of bars, adult shops. It was a cold, hard, insensitive time of my life. Actually, it was during this time that I was suicidal.
There was a season in my life where I walked in such darkness, I tried to take my own life. I was such a failure. I had blown it. I had messed up. I had sinned. I had walked away from God to such a degree that I saw no reason to live. I blew out the pilot on the stove. And the breath of God blew it back on. When I should have been dead in my own failure. Maybe you've never messed up that bad. Maybe you've been spiritual and righteous and walking upright. But I know what it's like to fall so low. You don't know what up looks like. But the power of the blood of Jesus.
By the age of 25, Kenneth Ulmer faced the devastating reality of 2 divorces, resulting in 2 daughters, one from each marriage.
My greatest area of failure was in the area of relationships. You say you're going to build a life till death do you part with someone, and something happens that changes all of that. And it's not till death do us part, it's till the gavel falls and the court says you part. And yet there is a bond that will not allow that relationship to dissolve. There's a child, there's a life, there's a daughter.
I'd come out in the summers and I would visit, with my dad and my stepmom. Chicago was my home. It was very different because in the summers I was the visitor, so it was always, let's do fun things.
I grew up in what I guess is termed South Central LA. I grew up with my mom. I didn't live with my dad. I saw him mostly on Sundays. He would pick me up a lot of Saturdays. We would hang out, go get ice cream. But for the most part, I saw him on the weekends and special occasions, of course.
You wrestle with the Disneyland daddy label, and at the end of the day, that's what it is.
Most of the big events in my life, he was there for. It was kind of like the everyday type of things that he really wasn't.
I never wanted my bad choices to have a negative effect on my children. And so it became a positive mission of mine that I would work at it. I'd strain to make their lives as close to whatever the heck normal is.
As Ulmer struggled with the reality of 2 failed marriages, he was finally blessed with the opportunity to correct the wrongs he'd made in terms of relationships and family.
I actually met him in high school. And he's said this in many sermons. He's told everybody he was not ready for me at the time. So, I was no nonsense. It's me or nobody else.
They say behind every great man is a great woman. Tagata Ulmer is no exception.
She is the wind beneath my wings, and yet she has never been in my shadow. I am proud of the way she has allowed God to navigate her life. My family is probably one of the weirdest families you've ever seen in your life. I look sometimes at the sitcom that Jada Pinkett and Will Smith put together that has to do with these blended relationships that sounds very Hollywoodish and far-fetched. I can relate to that. That's like us.
I was always very good at deciphering my dad as my pastor and my dad as my dad. So on Sunday mornings when he was preaching, it was not about, oh, that's dad up there, having a word from the Lord. It was about, the Lord has something to say to me through him.
I know pastors, I have friends whose sons and daughters hate church, hate God, hate the ministry, because they feel as though they lost their father or their husband to God. How do you compete with God?
We made each other a promise that we would tell each other everything, no matter what bothers you, no matter how bad you think it is, you've got to be able to communicate. So we promised each other we would do that. And he said to me, there's nothing that you can't tell me. So I believe him, so I let it rip.
It's been a challenge because people sometimes put us on pedestals, you know, and they think that we should act a certain way, and that's really not who we are. Or it was really challenging on the dating circuit. A lot of men were actually intimidated by, oh my God, that's the bishop's daughter, you know.
The first time my husband preached at Faithful Central, jaws were on the floor. They were like, that is a clone of Bishop Ulmer. I pretty much married my dad.
He was a forerunner for me to have, to increase my faith, to think big things and to see, to dream big dreams. He wears his power and authority so well that I never felt pressure from him, be it as my boss or even as my father-in-law. I had the pressure on myself because I didn't want to disappoint him.
The youngest member of the Ulmer clan is their beloved son, Kendon.
Kendon is 19. We adopted him when he was 5 months old. I could never have children. We tried everything and in vitro and the whole thing, and that didn't happen. So I'm saying, okay, maybe I'm supposed to get a child in different ways.
He is the joy of my life. I am so proud of him. He is now studying in London at Le Cordon Bleu International Culinary Institute. I never wanted my son to feel like he was under any pressure at all to be like me, but that he would know that it is okay to want to do something that is nowhere near what Dad does, and Dad supports you in it. And that's a blessing.
Bishop Ulmer's role as father figure to many took an unexpected turn during his mission to Africa.
I'm teaching a class in South Africa to a group of kids, and I kept noticing that every time I said gift, that young lady laughed. At the end of the session, I came back and said, why are you laughing? And they said, her name is Gift. Because the word gift in Sotho is the name or the word M-P-H-O, Mpo. And that young lady whose name was Mpo became a gift to my wife and my family and I. She was about 16, 17 when I met her, and she became as our adopted goddaughter. And last year, she died of AIDS. There is a hole in your soul when you bury a child. Bless the memory of this great woman. In Jesus' name, amen. When you watch the life being snuffed out of that child, that is inexplicable. And it requires nothing short of the grace of God to bring you through it. Coming up on Exalted.
He told me a month before we were supposed to get married that he had been called to preach. And I'm going, oh no, this is not what I bargained for.
And then there were 10. When you enter the stage, God lives here is what I see. Sunday Best heats up.
You gotta make me look good.
And the talent shines through on America's Next Great Music Competition.